Tomatoes are often referred to as the gateway to gardening. They can also be the gateway to seed saving since they are super easy to save. In this video, we'll be learning how to save tomato seeds and other members of the nightshade family. Note that potatoes are usually grown from tubers. Members of the nightshade family have perfect flowers, which means that within one flower are both the male and female part. For tomatoes, Cape gooseberries, and ground cherries and tomatillos, they often get pollinated before the flowers even open, so it's really easy to save those seeds reliably, and they're going to be like the parent. Now, with peppers and eggplants, sometimes an insect will get involved and pollinate it, and it could be bring pollen from a different variety. In that case, you'll get an unintentional hybrid or a cross, and we're going to talk about how to avoid that. In order to save seeds, you need to start with seeds that are not hybrids because they're not going to come out like their parents. When saving seeds, you need to look at the package. You can only save seeds reliably from things that are heirloom or otherwise known as open pollinated. So look at the package, and anything that has the word hybrid or filial one, which means offspring, or F1 or F cannot be saved reliably. Hybrids have different parents. The first generation has a reliable cross, and so that's why they can sell something and you'll get what you want. But if you save those seeds, you will get some weird mix of the two parents, and it could be just any random mix, and so you can't save those reliably, and please don't bring those to the library to share for others. Now let's start with tomatoes. There are some strategies to increase the probability that you're going to get seeds that you want that are like the variety you're growing now. Now, a great strategy is just plant one variety. You can also, if you want to kind of maintain absolute purity, you can separate varieties by 10 feet. Now, the home gardener might not be able to get a 10-foot separation between all the varieties, so just do the best that you can. There might be a minimum amount of crossing, but it's going to be fairly low in most cases. Another strategy is if you could also plant flowering crops between varieties so the insects, if they're already involved, might get distracted between one variety and another. Another important aspect of seed saving is genetic diversity. One of the best ways to ensure this is to save seeds from multiple plants of the same variety. So if you can plant several tomatoes of the same variety and save seeds from those different plants, that is awesome. But if you only have one plant of that variety, it'll be okay for tomato plants. When saving seeds from tomatoes, make a label, put it on the container, squeeze some of the tomato pulp and seeds into a jar, and let it sit for a couple of days until you get kind of a mold on top. The mold will actually help to kill some of the seed-borne diseases, so it's a good extra step to do as opposed to just putting them on a paper towel and letting them dry. After the mold has developed, just kind of pull that off and then add a little bit of water, rinse, do this a couple times until you get nice clean seeds, put them on a plate, let them dry for a couple days, and then put them in an envelope that is clearly labeled. Tomatillos and ground cherries are also put into a container, but you don't need to let them ferment. You'll just rinse them and then put them on a plate. Now it's time to make envelopes for your tomato seeds. Some things that are important to include are whether it's determinate, that's a bush type of plant, which is great for containers, or indeterminate, which means it's going to keep growing and growing. The color, size, and shape. So is this a cherry, a plum, a pear tomato? Is just kind of a regular round one, or is it a beefsteak, really large tomato? What's the use? Is this fresh eating? Is it something you'd make a paste out of? Also, does it have any particular disease resistance? And then including whether or not it's an early, mid, or late season crop. Eggplants and peppers can be self-pollinated or insect-pollinated. We want to keep the insects out so we can save these seeds reliably. Now, the easiest strategy, which isn't always reliable, is to only plant one variety of peppers or eggplants. The reason it's not reliable is your neighbors could have eggplants or peppers and you could unintentionally get a cross. So an easy strategy for the home gardener is to get those little polyester bags. You can get them at Sustainable Seed Company, but you can also get them at like weddings and whatnot. And you go out in the evening and you identify flowers that are about to open and you put the little bags on. It's also a good idea to put a little ribbon on. A brightly colored one like red is good. So later on, when the fruit forms, you take the bag off. The marker is there, that little red ribbon, so you know which seeds you've saved reliably from. You can combine the seeds from multiple plants of the same variety so that you've got a little bit of genetic diversity because you've saved the seeds from several different plants. For peppers, The seeds will be ready to harvest when the fruit is fully mature. Just take the seeds out, put them on a plate, let them dry a little bit more. For eggplants, you're going to want to let them get past the mature stage so that they're kind of turning a dull color, and then put those seeds on a plate and let them dry. Once again, it's helpful to save from multiple plants to increase the genetic diversity. Now, it's recommended to save from about 20 pepper or eggplant plants, but that's not necessarily reasonable for the average home gardener. So see if you can save from at least 6 plants. Once again, the more plants you save from, the greater the genetic diversity and vigor of the plants, and it's a good strategy in general. For processing the seeds from the overripe eggplants, just scrape out the center, rinse, and then put it on a paper towel or a plate to dry for a couple of days. One of the mantras of the seed library is label, label, label. You can download labels at richmondgrowsseeds.org. It's really important to convey specific information about eggplants, such as the type. So for example, where we live in Richmond, California, these Italian globe eggplants don't work very well in our cold summers. So identifying that will help people choose their eggplants as well as the size and the color. With saving pepper seeds, one strategy, as we mentioned earlier, is to plant only one variety of a species. So it's helpful to know the different species for peppers. There's lots of things in the capsicum annuum, everything from the bell pepper, which is sweet, to jalapenos, which are not. But you can plant some unusual peppers like the ricotta, which has black seeds. And so if you planted a ricotta and a bell pepper, those would not cross. Now, as we mentioned, because your neighbors might be growing peppers, this is not the most reliable way to save, and hot is the dominant gene. So caging, which is an advanced technique where you build a cage over it, is a little bit more advanced than the average home gardener wants to get involved in. So use that strategy where you get those little bags and put them over the flowers, and that'll work just fine. Knowing the species of peppers will help you to plan your garden to eliminate or minimize cross-pollination. Here's a list of some of the species and some common varieties within that species. Once again, you can't control what your neighbors are doing, so bagging is the best strategy. To harvest the seed, let the fruit ripen fully on the plant and the color be uniform. Monitor to make sure there's no mold as the seed develops, and if it's late in the season and you're afraid of frost or something like that, you can cut and let it ripen indoors. To process the pepper seeds, remove the core and scrape off the seeds from the core. Remember, if it is hot, you might want to be using gloves. You may or may not need to rinse or decant. It depends on if there's extra stuff in there, and then just let the seeds dry in a plate out of the sun for a couple of days. Remember, the mantra for seed envelopes is label, label, label. For peppers, you want to include whether it's a hot or a sweet pepper, the color, how long did it take to mature? Is this a small little pepper or a large one? What's the use of it? Is it fresh? Is it good for stuffing or frying or roasting? And you also want to mention, like, what effort did you take to save the seed properly? So if you only grew one variety, make a note of that on the envelope, which means then people are more likely to borrow those seeds because they know they're more likely what you say they are. Richmond Grows Seed Lending Library is located in the Richmond Public Library in Richmond, California. If you're interested in creating a library in your own community, visit our Create a Library page at richmondgrowsseeds.org. Richmond Grows is a fiscally sponsored project of Urban Tilth and a collaborative project between Richmond Rivets and the Richmond Public Library. Also check out our Community Emergency Response Program. It's a great way to organize your community, your family, or your school by just taking 2 steps a month. Visit us at twostepsamonth.wordpress.com.